Inihahandog ng UPCMC Departamento ng Broadcast at ng Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman. Kasama ang Philippine Studies Association at DZUP. Ang pagdiriwang ng ika-100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.
Isang mapagpalayang araw sa ating lahat. Welcome to BCQ, Broadcast in Quarantine. Hatid sa inyo ng UP Departamento ng Broadcasting at ng DZUP. Pag-uusapan natin sa programang ito ang mga isyung kinahaharap ng media sa panahon ng pandemya at kung paano ito nakaaapekto sa lipunan at sa pang-araw-araw na buhay nating mga Filipino. Ang BCQ ang naging tugon ng UP Departamento ng Broadcasting upang idokumento at mapag-usapan ang mga pagbabagong ito sa Philippine media landscape. Nabuo ito noong 2020 sa panahon ng lockdown dahil sa COVID-19 pandemic. Nagpatuloy ang pag-produce ng BCQ episode sa kursong Broadcast Journalism 130, Issues in News and Public Affairs Programs in the Philippines. Dahil sa specialized na subject matter ng kurso, naging tampok ang karanasan ng mga media practitioner, eksperto at mananaliksik ng mga news and public affairs program sa mga panayam sa student edition ng BCQ. Ngayon ay kasama na rin ang BCQ sa internship program ng DZUP 1602. Sama-sama nating tunghayan sa BCQ ang mga kwento at karanasan ng media sa Pilipinas sa panahon ng pandemya. Ako po si Ivy Claudio at ito ang Broadcast in Quarantine. Hindi maikakaila ang kahalagahan ng sports news sa ating kasaysayan. Napakarami ng sports event ang nagpamalas ng kagalingan ng mga Pinoy sa pampalakasan. Kaya naman, nararapat na isama natin at ipagdiwang ang sports broadcasting sa selebrasyon ng ika-100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas. Sa episode na ito ng BCQ, alamin natin kung paano naapektuhan ng pandemya at mga lockdown ang sports broadcasting. Sa panayam nitong Hulyo 2022, kina Beatrice Go, isang freelance journalist at researcher, Yani Mayo, isang sports writer at segment producer, at Professor Tessa Jazmines, ang presidente ng Larc&Asset PR. Samahan natin si Jermaine Cebu upang pag-usapan ang sports news and content in the time of the pandemic. Dito sa Broadcast in Quarantine.
Pagdiriwang ng 100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.
Malaking papel ang ginagampanan ng mga reporter sa play-by-play coverage ng mga live sports events. Dahil sa pandemya, tumigil pansamantala ang mga sports events at lubos na nakaapekto sa mga profesional at amateur na organisasyong pampalakasan. Mula sa Olympics hanggang sa University Athletic Association of the Philippines o UAAP. Paano nga ba naapektuhan nito ang mga nagtatrabaho sa sports coverage at ano-ano ang mga pagbabagong dulot ng pandemya? Ako po si Jella Cebu at makakasama natin sa ating unang segment si Ms. Beatrice Go upang talakayin ang mga pagbabagong ito sa pamamaraan ng pagbabalita at coverage sa larangan ng sports. Isang freelance journalist at researcher si Ms. Go na nagtrabaho sa Rappler bilang multimedia sports reporter. Nag-cover siya tungkol sa Philippine sports governance, Southeast Asian Games at Asian Games. Sa ngayon, gumagawa siya ng research ukol sa Women in News and Sports Initiative o WINS ng Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Magandang araw, Miss Go, and welcome to BCQ.
Hi, magandang araw po, Jera. Nice to meet you po.
To start off our interview, unang katanungan po, ano ang mga hamon na naranasan o nararanasan ng mga sportscaster sa pagbabalita ngayong pandemya?
So, nung pandemya, yung mga 2020 to 2021, syempre, like yung mga sports broadcasters, we also dealt with a lot of uncertainty kasi syempre wala nang sports events and 'di ba yung pagbabayad din sa mga sportscaster, like for example mga commentator and all that, parang per game siya, wala nang events, so saan na sila kukuha ng pamumuhay nila, 'di ba? Pero good thing, 'di ba, may Zoom na rin tayo, so while there are no events going on, so we invited like some athletes to parang talk pa rin, like kasi athletes also we're going through something. So, diba, may kita mo yung mga topics ng 2020 na parang, how are you coping with the pandemic? Ganon. Paano kayo nagta-training habang pandemic? Ganon. So, and yung minsan, yung iba, kina-cover pa namin yung parang sino, yung nagkaka-COVID, ganon. So, pero ngayon, like, transitioning out of pandemic, siguro yung mga natitirang mga systems or technology, syempre yung Zoom. So, for example, nagko-cover ako ngayon ng AFF Women's Championships where our Philippine Women's National Football Team, who's going to the World Cup, is competing. Tapos dito tayo yung host and nasa Rizal Memorial siya. So, until now, wala kaming mix zone. So, hindi katulad dati na parang dadaan lang yung mga players and then pwede na namin i-interview, ganun, parang flash interview. Pero ngayon, kailangan pa mag-request sa mga media officers kung pwede kami mag-request ng media availability and lahat ng press conference namin na kahit nasa same room lang kami, as in like same room lang, pero naka-Zoom kami. And I guess in terms of just getting stories, ayan na, yung mga nagme-message lang sa IG, FB ng atleta, tapos, or nagpapakilala na lang na, uy, I need an interview. So, I had people coming to me asking for yung mga contacts din nila kasi sobrang important na ngayon na may contact ka sa mga athletes or mga coaches and officials ng sports.
Ngayon lumuwag na ang mga lockdown restrictions. So meron bang nagbago sa mga technology, sa mga systems na ginagamit sa pagbabalita ng sports? So meron bang nagbago sa kung paano yung paraan ng pagbabalita ng sports?
Siguro aside from yung kinuwento ko about yung sports coverage na wala nang mix zone, puro Zoom na lang, one of the other platforms na lumitaw during the pandemic was TikTok. Yeah, so right now, TikTok, it can't still be monetized, pero may kita mo na grabe yung nagiging awareness and yung mga the number of people that is just in the TikTok space. So it gave like an opportunity also and a reason din for journalists to be in that platform. Kasi syempre, like not as a sports journalist, journalist pa rin ako. So important na we are able to combat all the misinformation din. Grabe talaga yung nangyari sa yung mga studies on TikTok and how, sobrang unregulated din yung mga information, just like any other social media. So like I really had to learn how to like write and actually parang almost like memorize your script, and even like instead of like talking to an dati parang sanay na ako na live reporters, I'm talking to an actual camera, tapos someone's manning the camera, right? So right now it's like, wow, it's me na lang, like I'm all alone in filming myself, making my own script, and even like editing my own video. So it's like an additional challenge na sa multimedia reporting, and parang I guess yung mahirap sa amin is ginagawa naming parang investment na wala kaming nakukuhang incentives just to be on TikTok. Pero alam mo, it's just for the service and for the good of the people na we're there. So I guess those are one of the new exciting yet challenging things that we have to transition to now.
You have to keep up na lang talaga sa mga emerging digital technologies. Katulad na nga ng TikTok, na sobrang in na in, lalo na sa mga Gen Z ngayon. And sa inyong karanasan bilang sports reporter at ngayon nga na researcher kayo for sports, ano sa tingin niyo ang mga kasalukuyan trends tungkol sa sports news and content?
So I guess in terms of like trends, which is really interesting because I'm doing this research nga on women sports content, and I guess like yung context is that before na super male dominated talaga ang sports. So lahat ng tao na nasa leadership, parang lahat ng mga anggulo ng mga sports media, parang medyo very patriarchal, or it has the quote-unquote male gaze. But then now with the rise of Filipino women, and even in sports, diba, na Heidelin Diaz was our first Olympic gold medalist, and she's a woman, she's a weightlifter. Tapos si Alex Ayala in tennis, and then we have the Philippine women's football team na pupunta na ng FIFA World Cup. So with all these emerging Filipina athletes, there would be a demand also for women's sports content. Kasi parang yun, like ayon sa naging research ko na parang I'm really gathering data to prove that there's a demand for women's sports content, and that means there's also a demand for women's sports journalists, which is really cool. It gives a lot of the aspiring women who are like initially like afraid to join the industry, where it would open an opportunity. It will give them like even a sense of purpose on why you have to be there. Because who could tell a woman's story not better, none other than women, diba? Bumabalik na rin yung interest sa live sports, which is really great because nakikita mo sa UAP, PVL, we hosted the Volleyball Nations League. Then now we're hosting the AFF Women's Championship. So Philippines is going back to hosting like these international events, like after the 2019 SEA Games, which was a massive win and victory for the country.
Gusto ko din talaga yung trend ngayon na marami ng women athletes and women's broadcaster na yung nag-take up space sa sports. Lalo na alam naman natin na very male-dominated ang sports industry. So it's very good to see that change. Ayun nga, nasabi mo rin yung live streaming. Ask ko lang, may nagbago ba sa coverage now na bumabalik na nga yung live event and nagkakaroon din, mas nagiging popular na yung live streaming as opposed to traditional broadcasting?
Yesterday, nagulat ka, everyone was just asked, and it's live streaming on mobile. Like that's the biggest like change, I guess, na dati everyone would just go, diba, yung mga habits natin is like, kailangan kong umuwi para makanood ng TV, ganun. Kasi ako rin, nung pre-pandemic, I would always have to come, especially if our teams are playing abroad and parang nasa Fox Sports lang siya, diba? Yun, I always had to like come home and like be sure to subscribe to like the TV channel. Ayun, like I always had to like subscribe and all that in order to catch the games then of our Filipino athletes. Pero ngayon, everyone, parang yesterday may nag-chat na sa mga group chats ko na, is there a way that I will be able to watch online? Ganun. So that means on their mobile phones, which is really more accessible. Kasi sabi ko na, grabe na, buti na lang, for example, the SEA Games, ang dami nga nasa YouTube lang, nasa Signal TV app, or even on Facebook, yung Puso Pilipinas, which aired the AFF Women's Championship game natin against Australia. So now TV broadcast stations are shifting talaga to mobile because that's the easiest way we could access. Very great and exciting trends then for sports, not only sports but media in general.
Last question, dahil meron pa rin yung mga pandemic restrictions, paano nasisiguro ng mga sportscaster na kalidad pa rin yung balita tungkol sa sports?
You know what I could say during the pandemic? It was really going back to the basics and actually reevaluating where journalism was already at that time. Kasi parang globally, journalism is like, being shaken in a way. Like, for example, in the US right now, there's like the conservatives and the Democrats, the right, left. Was parang a media outlet is already attached to like some wing in politics, diba? Tapos dito naman like grabe talaga yung disinformation. So, it was a time for us to reevaluate like how can we still be journalists at the digital age. So that's grounding in our purpose and our why, that we are here to like tell the truth. We are here to hold people accountable, also not only people but governments and anything in power accountable also, and to also let the stories of people be known, ganun. So parang back to training kami, and it's parang honing our skills din in terms of like doing in-depth stories, ganun, and also in terms of like reporting, adjustment, ganun, na parang we have to be super strong in our foundations and our skills, and bring that to whatever platform. And yun nga, super important din na mag-reevaluate ng values din. And honestly, like just being able to go back to the basics, like it even creates more room for improvement and creativity din.
Maraming salamat sa inyong oras para talakayin ang lagay ng pamamaraan ng pagbabalita sa sports sa gitna ng pandemya. Muli, si Ms. Beatrice Go, isang freelance writer and researcher.
Pagdiriwang ng 100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.
Kaakibat ng pansamantalang pagtigil ng mga sports events sa Pilipinas, malaki rin ang epekto nito sa kung paano ibinabalita at pinoproduce ang sports news sa bansa. Ang kawalan ng mga sports competitions at events ay naging hudyat rin ng pagbabago sa paggawa ng mga balita at content ukol dito. Paano nga ba naaapektuhan ng pandemya ang pagsusulat at paggawa ng content sa media tungkol sa larangan ng sports? Makakasama natin sa ating pangalawang segment si Ms. Yani Mayo upang talakayin naman ang pagbabago sa programming ng sports content. Isang experienced host si Ms. Yani na naging UAAP Season 82 courtside reporter para sa UP noong kanyang undergraduate sa Department of Broadcast ng UP Diliman at pinagpatuloy ang kanyang hosting career sa iba't ibang events. Sa ngayon, isa siyang sports writer at producer for digital and broadcast media. Magandang araw po, Ms. Yani, and welcome to BCQ.
Thank you so much, Jera, at salamat sa ating listeners and viewers for tuning in, and thank you for this opportunity na makasama ko kayo.
Para sa unang katanungan, paano nabago ng pandemya ang paraan ng produksyon ng mga programang pang-sports?
For the most part, I feel like sports is really a physical and active activity. Of course, we know that sports has to be in the area to do it, unlike esports, which nag-boom talaga siya in the pandemic because of our circumstances. So, dahil doon, for me, my personal experience is, syempre, nakat yung UAAP season, which naging courtside ako, because we couldn't do anything about going into the sports. We didn't have any sports. The students couldn't play. The athletes couldn't move because we all had to go in lockdown. And because of that, yung traditional broadcast media of sports, nag-move siya to online. And napaka-funny because yung mga boss ko ngayon, they would tell me, alam mo, we really had to learn how to use Zoom, we had to learn how to use Telegram, how to download videos, photos, paano yung ethics, di ba? Pagda-download from Instagram, kailangan ba mag-ask ng permission? So, ang daming aspects in terms of broadcast and media that had to move into the online sphere. And hindi lang kami yung natututo, pati yung mga medyo veterans na in the field, natututo, nagbabasa sila on how to use social media, on how to do online. So, medyo malaking learning curve then for everyone to shift the storytelling to online without actually having the sport to be covered.
So, ayun talaga, malaki talaga yung changes, lalo na ang sports talaga dapat in the moment ka, dapat nasa area ka. And laki ng shift ngayon na talagang virtual mostly ang mga programs na pinaproduce. So, ano naman yung mga content? Ano yung pagbabago sa mga content na nailalabas ngayon? Ano yung pag-apekto ng pandemic dito?
I think for the most part is na realize ng media industry that online it has a really vital role in pushing advertising, pushing promotion of the sport. So the primary difference in terms of content as yung nakita ko is parang the same amount of attention that online has is equal na rin to the amount of attention that broadcast has in terms of the media side. So it's just how you produce that kind of content, what kind of content yung nilalagay mo on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, compared to anong content nilalagay mo for TV. And interestingly, TV now is trying to migrate na rin to websites, diba, streaming services, and those are really big players nowadays for sports, especially kasi nakita natin actually in the pandemic, NBA had a dip in viewership, and we could see a lot of people watching highlights na lang on YouTube rather than the actual game itself. And also here, more recently naman, yung mga ibang sports dito sa Philippines, mas naging highlighted na rin yung mga streaming sites kasi people abroad also want to watch the sport and also want to tune into what's happening here in the Philippines. So parang talagang streaming was one of the things that differed in terms of how we create content and how to migrate traditional media to the newer platforms.
Talagang ano na talaga yung pag-shift ng tao, pag-subscribe nila sa streaming as compared to traditional broadcast platform. Na ako rin naman na talagang minsan hindi lang nanonood ng TV sa YouTube, lang nanonood ng highlights nga pag sa UAAP, ganun. Para naman sa ikahuling tanong, ngayong karamihan na ng mga sports event ang bumubuo ng partnership sa mga digital media platforms, paano ito nakaka-apekto sa kung paano na-distribute or na ipapamahagi yung mga sports content and programs?
Interesting nga yung question, Jera, because for me, personally, I broadcast with UAAP. Yung UAAP is in itself broadcasted in TV and broadcasted in streaming. So, in our experience, sa TV, iba yung mga anchors. Sa streaming, iba din yung mga anchors. And even though the pre-game flow is similar, mayroon pa ring tweaks in terms of anong makikita ng tao sa app, anong makikita ng tao sa TV. And I think those are the things na ginawa para to cater to the audience ng, both the two different platforms. And I think the thing that we did the main difference that we did for streaming and broadcast is that we let the anchors, the panel, really give their own flavor to it. Like, wala talagang naging rigid guidelines for the panel, rather, on how they want to tell the story and how they want to tell the game. Basta ito yung mga na-prepare naming segments for you. This is the player that we're gonna highlight. This is the video that we're gonna feature. And you guys can tell your story about how you know that player, about what story you want to highlight about them. So, I think that's interesting kasi pinapalabas yung personality ng mga talent. And ako parang, I feel like I'm missing out minsan when I don't get to watch streaming or when I don't get to watch TV. Kasi parang ano na bang pinag-usapan nila doon na hindi natin alam dito. So, I think there's that parang FOMO, FOMO feeling then. If you wanna be an all-around, diba, viewer, kunyari of the UAP, parang it's fun to see how both sides work and how the storytelling of both sides go.
So, kailangan talagang totoo ka sa both platform. And follow-up question lang, ano sa tingin nyo yung magiging landscape ng sports news and programming in the future dahil nga marami na ring changes ang naganap ngayong pandemic?
Well, I can only speak from experience kasi kabataan pa rin ako, Jera. I would say. Medyo, Gen Z represent. Medyo the older part of Gen Z. Pero like, I feel like I have a lot of growing to do and I have a lot of things to learn. But personally, as a viewer and as a creator of sports content, I see the landscape shifting towards more authentic stories, yung more personalized sa athlete, sa team. And I think we see that a lot, especially kunyari on different streaming platforms. I would say The Last Dance, if you guys watch that on Netflix, yung sa basketball. about the Chicago Bulls is really one of the pegs that we try to follow kasi the story was really catered to them. And ang ganda ng pagkakwento niya. And we see a lot of different docuseries, documentaries, honing in that aspect na talagang maghanap ka na yung unique selling point dun sa subject mo, tas yan yung ipapalabas mo. Instead of just doing like a patterned or a predictable formula that we see mostly in broadcast. I think what we also observe sa traditional media, 'di ba, in covering, medyo may predictability na rin yung nagiging flow, yung nagiging sequence of events, and we kind of want to change that depending on how the narrative will be. So, example, I'm a producer and I talk to our writers. Every game, umiiba talaga yung flow na fini-feature namin. Like, so when we do pre-prod, for yung mga broadcast students, the pre-production, yung mga nagmi-meeting before the actual production, we have to really tell the panel, ito na yung papag-usapan, ito yung video na ipapakita namin, and this is the only time na you'll show it, this is the only time we'll play it, and it's really important na everyone becomes in sync in that sense, kasi catered na talaga yung nagiging stories na pinapakita namin.
Maraming salamat sa inyong oras para talakayin ang lagay nga ng ng programming ng sports content sa gitna ng pandemya. So, muli, thank you po, Miss Yani Mayo, isang sports writer at producer.
Pagdiriwang ng 100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.
Malaking hamon ang dulot ng pandemya hindi lamang sa sports coverage at content, kundi pati na rin sa larangan ng marketing at advertising. Dahil walang sports events, nahirapan ang mga sports news and content creator na magkaroon ng funding at publicity sa mga produksyon nila. Limitado rin ang mga events na kaya nilang isagawa dahil sa mga COVID-19 protocols. Paano nga ba naapektuhan ng pandemya ang pagdidistribute at pagpapatalastas ng sports news content? Ako po si Beatrice Go at makakasama natin sa huling segment si Professor Tessa Jazmines upang talakayin ang marketing at advertising ng sports content dito sa Pilipinas ngayong panahon ng pandemya. Si Professor Tessa Jazmines ay isa lang naman sa mga kauna-unahang women sports writer sa Pilipinas. Isa rin siyang graduate ng UP College of Mass Communication na may bachelor's degree sa journalism at master's degree in communication. Kasalukuyan, siya ang president ng kanyang sariling PR company, ang Larc&Asset PR. Hindi lang yon, nagtuturo rin siya dito sa UP ng sports writing. Magandang araw po, Professor Jazmines, and welcome to BCQ.
Good morning at salamat at nakumbidahan ninyo ako dito.
Hindi ko na po papahabain to. Start na po tayo sa ating unang question. So,
Yeah.
Paano po ba nabago o naapektuhan ng pandemya ang pag-distribute at pagpapatalastas ng sport news content?
Siyempre yung pandemya talagang marami siyang na radically change across the board, not just sports, no? But in terms of news, siguro ang pinakamalaking naapektuhan dyan yung actual coverage ng news. Dahil for the longest time, at least for one full year noong 2020 especially, syempre walang makalabas. And so, mismo yung mga sports events na dating kino-cover, nawala. So, parang medyo standby lang yung mga reporters, pati yung mga networks, ganyan. Dahil walang live events to cover. Even in terms of staging of sports events, marami ring mga medyo na-challenge financially na mga events management groups because there was nothing to go by on. So, the news was at the start of the pandemic, kung hindi man recycled, nagpupunta kami sa iba't ibang aspeto ng news. Kung walang event, we go into the lifestyle things, the aspects of sports. We go into personality, parang bios ng mga players, tapos mga haka-haka, mga opinion, mga ganyan. Mostly, lalong-lalo na nung talagang bawal pa. Pero of course, nag-ease up din yon little by little, and bumalik yung actual live coverage, although in a limited degree, dahil wary pa din yung mga nag-stage ng press cons, events, to let people in, especially for the sake of the athletes. So there were a lot of restrictions besides the usual social distancing and wearing of face masks. Very strict sa protocols yung kung ilan ang kukumbidahin, like there should only be about 2 people inside a venue at a time. I remember dun sa aming Nike coverage, may ni-launch kami na Jordan brand, yung Jordan store ng Nike. Lahat ng, dati kinukumbida namin 10, 12, 20. There was a time na, during that time, mga 4 lang yata ang nakumbida, tapos lahat sila isa swab test, tapos hindi lahat sabay-sabay, konti lang ang papasok doon sa venue. Ayun, ang dami ko na yatang sinabi.
Okay. Kaya talaga pagdating sa live, especially sa sporting event na talagang very team siya, and how can you foster relationship talaga kung onti lang din yung uma-attend.
Yes, oo. Ganun talaga. Pero talagang lubusang pag-iingat talaga ang priority for the athletes and for everyone to prevent the spread of the virus.
So, bilang presidente naman po ng isang PR firm, ano-ano naman po yung mga issue, mga challenge at hamon na na-experience nyo pagdating sa PR at marketing sites ng sport news and content?
Sa iba, challenge yun . Pero sa amin, at least ako personally, I decided to look at it as just a change of scenery. And tulad din ng classes natin sa UP, di ba? Yung virtual, maraming mga, I really welcome the virtual classes dahil it gave me an opportunity to be creative in a different medium. So same thing with PR. Wala kaming masyadong events to go to. We operated on a work from home basis, but we worked together with our clients to look for creative ways to reach our audiences. Like, again, may I mention yung client namin na Nike Philippines. During the height of the pandemic, since walang events, walang athlete visits, ang ginawa nila, they came out with an ad campaign that encourage people to, parang you can't stop us, parang ganyan. Na even during the pandemic, naglabas sila ng mga workout videos. They engaged all of their Nike athletes, kasama na dyan yung GDL brothers, Richie Rivero, and even international athletes to do their workouts on TikTok and on Instagram. Tapos yun ang inaano nila, they use those videos to encourage other people to get active indoors. Tapos nagpapakita sila doon ng video nila, and we even involve the media in that activity. Our other clients like One Championship, yung MMA naman siya, karamihan ng kanilang mga events were called dark events. Dark, not literally dark, but what it means is that yung mga fights were behind closed doors. Dati, yung audience, arena, ganyan, andun lahat ng sigawan, may mga flashing lights and so forth. Pero ito, the athletes had to conform and lumalaban sila lang dalawa. Parang nag-sparring lang sila, kaya lang it's the real thing. Tapos cameraman, referee, ganun lang. And then, yun ang ipinapakita as fights. So, as far as the audience was concerned, still the same competition, but what was missing was the live audience. So kami, ayun, we still went on with sharing the information, ano yung outcome ng mga laro na yon, to using the media. And then, pag nagpe-press con kami, virtual lahat. Pero in another sense, mas napaganda pa nga dahil we are able to invite media from Cebu, media from Baguio, whereas before, when we had press cons, we'll just rely on live media from Metro Manila. So, ganun, marami siyang pros and cons.
May positive din talaga yung pagiging virtual na mga tao from other area talaga na mahirap yung so pagdating
Tsaka tipid. Dati pag magpe-press con ka, syempre, may rerenta ka ng venue, pagkatapos, syempre, yung papakainin mo yung food, ng food yung media, yung guests, kung mag-hire ka pa ng events agency. Ngayon, wala. During that pandemic, we had different, siguro once a month, meron kaming tawagin ay media availability. We invite media for interviews, exclusive interviews with personalities, usually athletes, since yun ang marami kami hinahandle na accounts na sports. So, mas madali mag-set up ng events, ng media engagements dahil doon. So, yan lang. Creativity and adjustment lang.
Thinking about digital media naman po, ngayong karamihan na ng mga sports event ang bubuo nga ng mga partnership sa mga digital media platforms. Paano ito nakaka-apekto sa kung paano nyo na-distribute or naipapamahagi yung mga sports content and programs?
Talagang kumbaga, ang contribution niyang development na yan ay explosive. Explosive kasi kung dati dito ka lang naka-focus sa dinidistribute mo lang dito sa Metro Manila, Philippines, because of these digital media, you're able to reach the whole world. Your audiences have become bigger, more diverse, and you reach across time zones. Digital media allows us to watch and consume content on demand. So, ayun, talagang quantum leap yun nangyari in terms of coverage, in terms of how content is enjoyed, and also access is given to more people because of the digital media revolution. So talagang bukod sa nagkaroon ng pandemya at sabihin na natin na intensify yung ating dependence on digital media, rin at the same time talagang nagma-march on, nag-evolve yung ating media, and it's really all going into digital. As a matter of fact, all of our clients talagang hindi na sila masyadong mainstream. Meron pa rin kailangang mainstream ang dinidemand nila na exposure nila, pero walang magsasabi na wag kayong gumamit ng digital media kasi it's something that cannot be ignored. But from bloggers to vloggers to TikTokers, all of them have a value in terms of communication.
As a broadcaster, it's important na makakope tayo sa mga changes na nangyayari sa industry natin. For the last question na lang po, sa tingin niyo po ba yung pag-shift sa digital media ay naka-apekto din sa mga sports networks or channels sa traditional broadcast platforms?
Yes, to the point where they have no choice but to also develop their own digital arms and to go into new media, so to speak. So kahit sabihin na natin One Sports or GMA, you cannot just rely on your television coverage. You have to have your social media assets. You have to also go into discover other platforms like TikTok, Kumu, mga ganyan. Kailangan pasukan mo rin yun. Hindi mo talaga pwede na ma-ignore. Kasi talagang sobrang maraming taong tuned in doon talaga eh. I always like to think of it this way. Yung mainstream media natin, if we are to make an analogy to the human body and the circulatory system in particular, yung mainstream media natin are like the veins and binadaluyan ng veins and arteries. Pero yung social media, yung digital media, yan yung capillaries na those smaller networks are able to reach the tips of your fingers, the tips of your ears. Mas malalim ang nila. Handun yung talaga yung base, yung talaga important news. Ganyan, andun sa veins, arteries, ganyan. Sila talaga yung nagpapadaloy. Pero kung gusto mong ma-reach kahit yung farmer up there in the na let's say walang signal ng radyo pero everybody has a cell phone, makukuha niya yung news on his digital platform, whatever it is. So ganun ang tingin ko. Malaki ang role ng digital media, and talagang nag-boom siya because of what happened to us during the pandemic.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras para talakayin ang lagay ng mga marketing at advertising ng sports content sa gitna ng pandemya. So, muli, Professor Tessa Jazmines po, ang President ng Larc&Asset PR Consultants. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat na nagkabahagi sa episode na ito ng BCQ Broadcasting Quarantine. Sana'y makasama namin kayo sa susunod pang talakayan tungkol sa mga issue ng media sa gitna ng pandemya dahil hindi na ika-quarantine ang malayang talakayan.
Pagdiriwang ng 100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.
Bagamat lubos na naapektuhan ng pandemya ang sports broadcasting, lalo na sa panahon ng lockdown, hindi natin maikakaila ang mga pagbabago simula sa conceptualization, production at distribution ng sports content upang mapagtagumpayan ang mga hamon at limitasyong dulot ng pandemya. Simula sa field reporting, event coverage, sports programming, maging ang pag-market at pag-advertise ng sports content. Sa pagbabalik ng mga sports events sa next normal, tiyak na patuloy nating matutunghayan ang kagalingan ng mga Pinoy sa larangan ng pampalakasan sa tulong ng sports broadcasting. Dito sa BCQ, patuloy naming aalamin, susuriin at iintindihin kung paano nga ba nagbago ang media sa panahon ng pandemya. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat na nakibahagi sa episode na ito ng BCQ Broadcast in Quarantine. Sana'y makasama namin kayo sa susunod pang talakayan tungkol sa mga isyu ng media sa gitna ng pandemya dahil hindi na ika-quarantine ang malayang talakayan. Ako si Ivy Claudio, maraming salamat at isang mapagpalayang araw sa ating lahat.
Ang programang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng UPCMC Departamento ng Broadcast at Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman, kasama ang Philippine Studies Association at DZUP, sa pagdiriwang ng ika-100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.